So you're applying to grad school and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, right? Well, I want to tell you something right up front. That feeling isn't your fault. Today, we're diving into the system that turns all that chaos into control.
The natural instinct for most of us is to try and fight that stress by managing our emotions. Just calm down, don't be so anxious. But here's the thing, and this quote really hits the nail on the head. The problem isn't your feelings. The stress is structural. It's literally built into the process itself.
And believe it or not, that feeling actually has a name: cognitive overload under uncertainty. It's what happens when your brain is trying to juggle dozens of moving parts: deadlines, essays, emails, recommendations, all while the outcome is a complete mystery. It's not just stress, it's a very specific kind of mental burnout that comes from having no structure.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because we can actually break down why it feels so chaotic. It's a perfect storm of four things. First, the stakes are incredibly high. These decisions can change your career, where you live, your whole future. Then you have uncertain outcomes. You just don't know what's going to happen. You're juggling multiple moving parts. And finally, you've got identity attachment. This idea that if you get rejected, it says something about your worth.
Okay, so what does this all mean? The crucial point is this: if the problem is structural, the solution has to be structural too. Trying to calm down is like trying to fix a sputtering car engine with positive thinking. It's just not going to work. No, the real solution is to build a system, an architecture that brings clarity to the chaos.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dig a little deeper into the source of stress. Then we'll build what I call the application operating system. After that, we'll learn to see our applications like an investment portfolio, figure out how to protect our mental energy, and finally, deploy a really cool strategy called the pre-mortem protocol.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem, right? The stress isn't about how hard the work is, it's about the ambiguity. It's your brain screaming for a clear path forward. So now, let's stop talking about the problem and start building the solution.
I want you to think of this next part as building your own personal application operating system. It's not just one tool, it's a whole set of systems designed to manage the process for you. And we're going to start with the absolute basics: how you manage your time and how you manage your files. And this slide just lays it out so perfectly. You've really got two paths you can go down. On the left is the default, the panic cycle. We've all been there: procrastinate, then rush like crazy, and your anxiety just goes through the roof. But on the right, that's the alternative, the timeline system. You make time visible, and that visibility is what calms everything down.
So how do you actually do this? It's simple. You reverse engineer the deadline. You start with the final date, let's say December 15th, and you just work your way backward. You set your own internal deadlines. The final draft of your statement of purpose, that's due to yourself on December 1st. CV's done by November 25th. And just like that, this one giant, terrifying deadline becomes a series of small, totally doable steps.
All right, now let's talk about something that seems small but causes so much hidden stress. Does this look familiar to anyone? This is what I call version chaos. It seems like no big deal, but every single time you have to hunt for the real final version, you're burning precious mental energy. It's just a constant, low-level drain. The fix for this is something we'll call document discipline. You create one single source of truth, one master folder for everything, with clean, logical subfolders inside. And look, this isn't just about being neat and tidy for the sake of it. It's about offloading that mental work. You let the folder system do the remembering for you, so your brain can focus on what actually matters: the writing and the research. Okay, so once we have our timeline and our documents totally locked down, we can really start to level up our strategy. We're moving beyond just being organized. Now, we're going to stop applying based on gut feelings and start treating our applications like a strategic investment. This right here, this reframes the whole game. Instead of thinking about it like a single ladder you could fall off of, you're managing a diversified portfolio. Your core holdings, those are the programs where you're a really strong fit. That gives you psychological safety. Your growth assets, those are your reach schools, the ones that push you. And most importantly, you have a cash reserve, a backup plan that completely kills that terrifying what if none of this works feeling.
So how do you actually decide which schools go into which bucket? Well, you use data, not just feelings. You create a decision matrix just like this one. You stop asking which school feels right, and you start scoring them on concrete things like research alignment and the probability of getting funding. You're turning this vague, emotional decision into something clear and strategic.
So everything we've built so far has been external, right? Timelines, folders, spreadsheets. Now we're going to turn inward to protect your most valuable resource of all, your cognitive bandwidth. Your mental energy is not infinite, and this process is designed to drain it dry. We need a defense system.
And listen, the stakes here are incredibly high. This isn't just about feeling a little better. Just look at this number. Over a quarter of graduate students say stress is directly hurting their academic work. So managing your energy isn't some luxury. It's a core part of being a high performer.
This is where you have to get intentional. You set up some hard and fast rules for yourself. You only work in focused 2 to 3 hour deep work blocks. No distractions. You batch all your similar admin tasks together. Do all your professor emails at once so you're not constantly switching gears. And you make a pact with yourself. You will never, ever edit your statement of purpose at midnight, because all that does is mess with your head without actually making the essay any better.
And that brings me to the ultimate weapon in this fight, the sleep shield. And let's be super clear about this. Sleep is not some fluffy, feel-good advice. The research is solid. Sleep is a critical moderator. It literally weakens the biological link between stress and burnout. It is the single most effective thing you can do to protect your ability to do good work.
All right, for our final section, we're going to install the most advanced piece of software in our operating system. It's called the pre-mortem protocol. This is an incredibly powerful technique for taking that vague, paralyzing fear of failure and turning it into a precise, actionable plan.
It sounds complicated, but it's a really simple 3-step exercise. Here's how it works. First, you imagine it's a year from now, and you didn't get in anywhere. You actually let yourself go there. Second, you analyze that hypothetical failure. You write down the 3 most likely reasons it happened. And third, this is the magic part. You figure out one concrete action you can take right now to prevent each of those things from ever happening.
So, for example, let's say you do this exercise and you realize a likely reason for failure is just a really generic statement of purpose. Your proactive step is crystal clear. You stop worrying and you start working. You go find 5 recent papers from the professor you want to work with, and you weave specific, smart references into your essay. See what happened? That vague fear just became a concrete to-do list.
And really, this slide sums up the entire mindset shift we've been talking about. You move from being a stressed applicant where your whole sense of self is tied to an outcome you can't control, to being a strategic operator. Your identity gets tied to the quality of your prep, the one thing you actually can control.
So I'll leave you with this one final thought. You have total control over your preparation. You have zero control over the final admission decision. The process is designed to find people who can manage complexity under pressure. So the question is, are you going to be a passive applicant or are you going to be a strategic operator?